What is the protocol? Call me, call Jeff if you want. Right, call Jeff if you want. Good evening and welcome to Jackson Public Schools Board of Education November meeting. Thank you for coming. I know the weather's kind of iffy out there and I appreciate your time. If a person wants to speak to the board, speak at public comment, please fill out one of these as soon as you get in here. And we will address those in the order they were received. Once you fill it out, you can give it to Michelle Oxley and it'll get in the file. Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. Let's start there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this point, Michelle, do the roll call, please?
Mrs. Brown? Here. Mr. Dobies? Here. Miss Acton?
Here.
Miss Hunt?
Present.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Here.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second, any discussion on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we'll go to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Beal?
Absolutely. I'm going to invite our auditors, Manor Costa, come on, I can't even say it. Yeah, I can get our auditors come up and help us with our audit presentation. They're going to share some good news, and Marcus can help kind of lead through this, walk us through our audit. They'll talk to us about some of the things going on in our world, and this happens every November. So they worked hard on the audit over the summer, and first year with the new company, so we're pleased with the results. If you can hit the little guy with the
Good. Perfect. Well, thank you for that introduction. And you are far and away not the only person that's ever struggled with this name. So we used to go as Maynard, Casterison, and Ellis, so the acronym was MCE. Really easy for everybody. Then we, I think in 2009, 2010, dropped the Ellis, which was the easiest part of the name to say, and now it goes as Maynard, Casterison. But very happy to be here. Happy to see all of you guys tonight. As mentioned, my name is Jeff Strauss. I've been doing school district audits for almost 20 years. It'll be 19 years next year. Maynard as a firm, I want to say, and I'm probably correct, that we do more school audits than anyone else in the state. So we did about 115 this year. So it's an area that we do a lot of and have a high focus on throughout the state. Have a little bit of those highlights on this slide. Not going to spend a lot of time here, but it really just is to say, not necessarily to kind of toot our own horn or anything like that, but we do have a high level of expertise, and we're absolutely thrilled to be working with Jackson Public Schools. The next slide, I've got a couple of other items on your handout that I don't see on this screen in front of you, but just to give you an overarching idea of what happened during the audit. So we come out, as stated, every single year. We look at the financial information. We look at the internal controls of the organization. We issue opinion on those financial statements. And for a board standpoint, you're going to be really happy to hear that we did issue what we would call an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion on the numbers of Jackson schools. And a lot of that can really give you a comfort level that the information that you're seeing kind of month in and month out from the finance team is accurate information that you can be confident in making decisions on. We also do an audit of your federal awards. So as all schools receive, you get financial funding from federal sources. The big topic over the past 3-4 years has been the COVID-related dollars. As you can see on the right-hand side of your handout, we did audit the ESSER dollars, which is that Education Stabilization Fund. You had about $11 million in spending during the current year. From an overall standpoint in federal funding, you had about $19 million. and federal expenditures this year. So we looked at $11 million out of that $19 million and had no issues, clean audit opinion on that as well, no findings on the federal awards. The one item that I do want to mention on the financial statement side of things, you can see that up on the slide. We did issue an unmodified opinion. We are new auditors. We came in. We probably look at things a little bit different than other firms, not right, wrong, or anything like that. We did end up having one restatement, but it was for the very positive of the district. So during our audit process, we were able to see we had about $941,000 adjustment on some of the accruals that were there last year that ended up having a $900,000 benefit to your beginning fund balance to start the year. So it was an item that came up during the audit, but it was a overall benefit on the overall bottom line to the organization. The other item that you have within this slide is we do have what we'd call a governance letter. I'll go over that at the end, but I like to consider that piece an exit engagement letter and just shows the board, did any other issues really come up during the audit? We'll go through that audit at the end of the financial statement presentation. Moving on into the next slide, I think. You can see here, this is the information that the board's used to seeing on a monthly basis. So you're looking at the funds of the organization. The general fund is going to be your main operating fund of the school. You also have a 2018 capital projects fund. So that was the bond that was passed, spending that down over the past few years. We spent another $2.6 million during the current year. And that's really getting to that current almost closeout of that bond. But that's what's going on within that fund. You had a new fund in the current year. You can see that right in the middle. Not a lot of activity yet, but it's really great news for the district. You can see that we have that electric bus capital projects fund coming in. So we have quite a few buses that are coming into the fold for the school. All that money had come in as of June 30. Hadn't actually received the buses, purchased the buses, anything like that. So we had no real impact on the profit and loss of that fund, but you can see we did have that activity start showing up during the current year, and we'll start seeing that come to fruition during the 24-25 school year. You also have a group that we consider in this non-major fund governmental grouping, and that's going to be your food service, your debt service. You have another capital project, couple of capital project funds back there, and some student activity accounts. But looking at the general fund, you can see we had total assets of about $29.6 million, offset by liabilities of about $9.8 million, leaving us with an ending fund balance of 19.7, almost $19.8 million, which is a really healthy fund balance. We'll see that percentage as a proportion of expenditures on the next page, where you're at about 25.5%. So we were able to add $1.75 million in the current year to that general fund. You can see that information on the next slide here, where we show all of that activity. Within that general fund, we had $82.4 million in revenues. That's going to be the state aid that you receive, your federal funding. You receive property taxes, additional money from the ISD is included in that number as well. But overall, you had $82 million in revenues, offset by about $80 million in expenses. That's adding that $1.7 million to your general fund balance. Then with that benefit on the restatement, bringing us to a starting point at the beginning of the year of $18 million, we ended the year with $19.77 million in the general fund, taking us from about 24.44%. You can see that. Don't even want to mess with the laser at all. Up slightly to that 24.5%. That's a really, really healthy fund balance. And all of the schools that have received a lot of this COVID-related dollars over the past few years have done exactly the same thing that you're seeing Jackson do. I mean, if you were very intelligent about how you spent that money, you were adding that cushion for some of these future inflation costs, future rainy day funds that the district then can rely on going into the future. The other couple of funds, I mentioned them already, the activity that's going on there. But you can see we spent about $2 million in that building and site fund. In that second column, very little activity in the electric school bus fund, but you'll see a lot more going on with that next year. And then you can see the activity related to that non-major governmental funds that we already discussed as well. So overall, you're looking at some very positive things here, adding to fund balance, spending down the capital projects fund, improving the district as expected, and overall adding to fund balance in that final column, $700,000, taking us up to that overall fund balance of almost $26 million. So a lot of positives going on for the district during the current year. The next slide, this is your general fund only. It doesn't include any of those other funds that I just talked about. But you can see here where you budgeted to start the year. So going back to 2023, June of 2023, where were you from a budget standpoint? What changed in that final budget that we then put together during June of 2024? And where did that compare to your actual dollars at the end of the year? So you can see that all within this slide deck. And I really want to focus on where you ended up. I mean, on a $80 million budget, you had a $582,000 overall variance in where you plan on coming out. And line by line, you can see all of them are within 1% budgeting or variance on your budgets. So very, very, very tight budgeting. Coming in on your revenue side of things, you were a positive variance of about $688,000. Expenses were very, very close, $146,000 variance there, and overall adding more to fund balance than you had originally planned on. So all of these are very, very good things for the district and really a sign of some pretty solid budgeting within this as well. You really don't want to have a negative variance on your net change in fund balance variance. I always tell my districts, you don't get a hero award by coming like razor thin on that budget when you're approving that on that final budget. So having a little bit of a conservative mentality is always a good thing. The state never, I mean, you're in violation if you actually spend more dollars than you plan on spending within that overall change in fund balance number. So very, very tight budgeting when you're looking at this. Something the board should be really happy with. Within the numbers that I just talked about, it's a little bit of a different illustration on how you can visualize the dollars that we're talking about. The revenue, when I just said we had $82 million, it's broken up between those main categories that I previously mentioned. That's going to be your state aid funding. Most of that's coming from your foundation allowance. That was up about $458 in the current year to that $9,608 amount you can see right on the left-hand side. I'd love to say that number was going up again for the 24-25 year, but that's going to stay stagnant for the 24-25 year. But we've seen a lot of growth in that number over the past 4 or 5 years. And when we go back into the mid-teens, 2015 and through 2019, we didn't see a lot of increases in the state aid foundation allowance number going up. So seeing that go up another $450 for this year, added more unrestricted dollars that can go into the school to help the education of the students. But overall, you can see the vast majority of your revenue is coming in the way of that state aid. That's almost 75%. 17.8% is federal. All those dollars we already talked about. And then when we're looking at the property tax numbers, that's the levies that the school has. That makes up about 13%. Those are your major revenue categories for the school. The next slide here, we did do a 3-year trend, and you can see where those major changes have really happened over that 3-year period. When you look at that, you can see most of that increase has happened on the state side of things. So that blue portion of the graph has increased quite a bit over the past couple of years. You've also seen from 22 into 23 and 24 an increase in federal funding. We all had that COVID dollars coming in during those years. So it was really just a timing of when a lot of those dollars were being spent. And we were a little heavier on the 23 and 24 years than we were earlier, like a lot of schools. And then we did see a little bit of an increase overall in the property tax piece as well. But just a nice illustration of the increase in dollars coming in from the state sources over the past few years. On the expenditures, I'd like to give the board a little bit of perspective of where expenditures should be and Jackson is right in line with really where you'd want to. So when you look at that state average of 57.6 of your expenditures going in the way of instruction-related costs, we're at 57.7. So almost spot on with what the state average is overall for schools. 40% of that is going in your support, so that's your non-direct education-related portion of your expenditures, but 40% is, again, really right in line with where other school districts were. So that's another thing that should give the board a lot of confidence that you're not a large outlier in any of those categories. Looking at your expenditures here over the past 3 years, you can see where there has been an increase. And I don't want it to be too alarming that we've had a little bit of an increase during 23 and 24. A lot of that is correlating with the graph that we saw on the revenue side of things. As we've spent more in the way of those COVID related dollars, we've seen those expenses increase. Some of them were supplanting where we were getting more revenues and maybe not increasing our expenses, but some of the COVID related dollars that were coming in required additional expenditures. So we're seeing a little bit of a shift up over the expenditure side of things during 23 and 24, kind of correlating with those increased expenditures on the federal side of things. But overall, you can see where we were, pretty consistent overall in the allocation of how we're spending between instruction and support. But overall, exactly what you would really kind of expect, spending a little bit more as those COVID dollars were being spent down. Here's another really good kind of, we call it KPI, when you're looking at some of those key points to compare yourself against other schools, where Jackson is really shaking up. When you look at that top number, you can see that statewide average, that 57.6 on the instruction side of things. We were at 57.7. When we compare to some of your other peer group schools, you can see you're really right in line, probably the most close to what that state average is of any of those peer group schools. So I think this is a nice comparison. Again, we're looking at 2022, 23 data because not all of the 23, 24 data is compiled for us to compare to. But again, it's a good barometer to kind of look at and see where you are and where you compare from a spending down on the instruction side of things with other schools within your peer group. General fund balance, I know we talked about this number being that $19.7 million as of June 30, 2024. So we've seen that number increase over the past few years, which is really great information to have from a board standpoint. You guys are sitting in a really nice spot at that 24.5%, which is very consistent with the percentage that you were last year. As those expenses potentially go down with maybe some reduced expenses, you might see that number go up a little bit. I don't know how much higher I'd want it to get than 24%, but I think you're in a really good spot, and you're not in a unique situation by having 24% fund balance. If you've been on the board for a while or been around schools, there was a point where 10 to 15, 12% fund balance was a very typical fund balance threshold. So to see that up to 24 is really, really good news. It means you have a lot of insulation, a lot of coverage going into the next few years, and you spent a lot of those COVID dollars in a very appropriate way. That's now allowing you the flexibility going forward that a school board, school district is really going to want to have. The next slide, you can see kind of where you compare to statewide and some of your other peer group as well. When we look at this, you can see that's a 21.2% is statewide. So 24 isn't too much higher than what that state wide category is. You're doing better than most of the other schools within your direct peer group comparison as well. So I think all in all, these are very positive numbers for the school. I was mentioning it a little bit on that last slide, but when we look at the highlights on the next slide, you can see where MSBO, which is Michigan School Business Officials, they provide rough estimates or recommendations on what they think the overall fund balance threshold should be. And we've seen this number steadily go up. So we're still looking at some dated information here at that 15 to 20%. I wouldn't be surprised if that number is going up to 20% going into next year, because they're a year behind with that information just because they don't have all of what's going on for the 23-24 school year. So I bet we're going to be seeing something closer to a 20% recommendation. And that's, again, a direct result of how districts have spent those COVID dollars. We know all of that was spent or required to be spent as of September 30, 2024. So that's not going to be here anymore as a safety net for the board, for the schools. So we probably will see some of these fund balances going into 24, 25, and beyond be used up, or some usage going on there, just because we don't have that extra cushion of federal revenue that we've been receiving over the past years. So you're going to be really happy to see that you have a 24%. And when you do, if you do start using some of that fund balance up, there is a really good reason for that. You're not getting that extra or additional dollars that you've been accustomed to. So districts that have been really good as far as managing their expenditure side of things probably will still see a little bit of a decrease there, but it's not necessarily a plan, but it's a known decrease because there's not going to be the revenue to offset that. Just want to make sure that's a point of the board, and it shouldn't be overly alarming if there is budgets that's coming in to start using or reducing that fund balance within the general fund. Should kind of be the plan, to be honest. A couple of the other things that happened during the current year, I'm not going to quite get to that second point yet. For individuals on the board that are familiar with the MIPSR's plan, your pension, your OPEB liability that's out there, I've spent most of my presentation focused on your fund level financial statements, not necessarily your full governmental, government-wide financial statements. But if you've been around for a while, you know we've been dealing with this pension liability and this OPEB liability within the financial statements. We've had some pretty good trends happening, especially over the 23-24 year, and I'm sure those are going to continue going on to your next fiscal year as well, because that MIPSR's plan is estimated or calculated as of their fiscal year end, which is September 30, 2024. So when you look back at where we were on the market side of things in September 30th of 2023, the markets were doing pretty good. We saw a really nice decrease in both your net pension liability and your net OPEB liability. That actually switched from a liability to an asset. So we had a $5 million liability on the OPEB side of things last year, and that shifted to a $1.5 million asset during the current year. And none of this should be alarming to the board at all. You're in the same pool as every other school that's part of the MIPSR's plan within the state of Michigan. We're just talking about Jackson's proportionate share of that overall net pension liability and that net OPEB, which is now an OPEB asset. So we saw about a $10 million improvement on the pension liability reduction during the current year, and we saw a nice flip from a liability on the OPEB side of things to a asset on the OPEB side of things, which is basically saying that the plan is now a fully funded plan on the OPEB side of things. It's not a fully funded plan on the pension side of things, and that's why we have a pension liability and a OPEB asset. So just good information for the board. But when we look at where the markets were this year, we should all understand that we've been having a pretty good year. And overall, I would expect both of those numbers to be improvements going into your next year as well. A couple of other items that I want to mention within this slide in front of you. You can see we did have a new governmental accounting standard issued during the current year. It's GASB 100, Accounting for Changes. So we did have an emphasis of a matter within the opinion of your audited financial statements. That's really there because we shifted the food service fund from a major fund to a non-major fund. Prior to GASB 100, we wouldn't have had to have that emphasis of a matter and put that wording within the opinion. But because of this, we did have to make some changes into the financials, and that ultimately ended up with an emphasis of a matter paragraph as well, which is within the opinion. Some future items coming up, you can see we do have GASB 101 and GASB 102 that are coming into play next year. Not a lot going on with those standards. Compensated absences, we will have to work with Marcus, with Matt, with the finance team to really maybe do a little more deeper digging into how we're calculating those paid time off liabilities that we're estimating at the end of the year. But that's something that we'll work with your team to come up with that number. And the other point I had written down to make a note of is just on that foundation allowance. So it's not a positive that we're staying at that same $9,608 foundation allowance per pupil, but we have seen some increases in that number over the past few years. So we've seen some increases, which is really great news, but that number isn't going to be increasing for the 24-25 year. So we're going to be still working in a situation that it's great to have that cushion in your general fund because inflation is still going up. We all know that. Expenses are probably going to go down only if we're not spending some of those expenditures that we had maybe on the COVID-related costs. But we're not seeing a big increase on the state side of things from a revenue standpoint either. So starting to have those conversations about maybe seeing fund balance be reduced in some future years isn't going to be a conversation that's going to be unique to Jackson Public Schools. You should be planning to use up some of that fund balance, but you're also in a very, very good situation seeing that fund balance at that 24.5% amount to end the year. That's what I have from the financial statement side of things. I do have an additional letter that I mentioned that I want to go over as well, but I don't need to jump into that. I'd rather kind of talk about any questions somebody might have on the PowerPoint slide that I just kind of went through, and then we'll hit on the letter.
Are there any questions from the board regarding the information you heard tonight?
I
Ms.
have
Hunt?
one question.
Sure.
Can you just add a little bit more details about the comparison of instruction, the schools that you chose? How did you make that selection and what specific data were you looking at to compare them?
I mean, it's consistent with, I think, the schools that you've seen within this presentation in the past. And we're happy to give you as many comparisons within that list. So if the school or if the board has recommendations for schools that they want to see compared against, we didn't really feel like it was going to be appropriate just to give the school districts within the direct surrounding area because they're not necessarily direct comparisons to Jackson Public Schools. So the intent within that peer group was to find schools that were as closely related to Jackson so you could get a good comparison on how you were performing to those schools. So I don't know that other than looking at those 5 or 6 and saying they were comparable schools to the district, that a lot of other thought was put into it. The bigger thing was is we didn't want to put skewed information in there on smaller schools that weren't really direct comparisons to Jackson that would potentially skew data and make things look, I mean, different than the environment that you're kind of working with.
So there was no specific data that you looked at from these schools to compare to Jackson Public Schools?
What was that?
There was not any specific data from these other schools that you looked at in comparison to
No,
JPS?
this is a like state provided. Like if you go out to your website, you can go to the transparency or some of that Michigan data
Mhm.
out there. We're really just pulling that on a very raw, simplistic form and comparing where they were from a fund balance, how they're spending it in comparison to support versus instruction, and seeing how that compares. We're not doing a lot of great detail to validate the information. That's all audited information from previous years.
Okay. And then can you explain the food service fund being moved to the non-major? What is the non-major? Just some
It's
clarity.
more of a technicality requirement. If a fund is large enough, and that's why you see your 3 funds, and that's either a percentage of assets, liabilities, revenues, things like that, you're required to move it into a major fund category. That's why you're seeing your capital projects fund. It's the significance, the dollars related to that fund that's making it either a major or non-major. The food service no longer met the percentage threshold to be required to be called a major fund within the district. So it was appropriate to move that back into kind of a non-major category. And you have supplemental schedules within your audited financial statements that will show the breakout of all of those non-major funds. But it's really just, you're looking at the non-majors a little bit different. I wouldn't say less scrutiny, but differently than how you necessarily would look at your major or your significant funds, and that's typically from a dollar threshold. So once it no longer met that dollar threshold, it was able to be moved to a non-major status.
Does this have anything to do with free and reduced lunch with all of our district
No.
being receiving? This has
It
no
really
correlation?
doesn't. Nope, it really doesn't. It's strictly, are you at that, 10% of your overall revenues in your, funds combined? Are you at that percentage from a asset standpoint, liability standpoint? Do you jump over any of those thresholds that then require it to be identified as a major fund? It really has nothing to do with the change in the way of the revenue. Because you're right, a lot of that dollars was coming from the federal prior to the 23-24 year. Starting in 23-24, a lot of those dollars were coming in the way of state aid. But it's just a simple calculation, and it no longer jumped over that threshold to be considered major.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so just like quick recap, comparative to other school districts, we spend a larger percentage of our general fund on instruction than most, I think is one of the slides you had up there.
Compared to that, KPI group that we
Yeah.
talked, they probably,
We've grown our fund balance by $1.7 million and got that close to $20 million, which is 24.5%, which is above the statewide average. So we're in a good position there. We've flipped our OPEB liabilities into an assets with a pretty good market, and also reduced our pension liabilities by about $10 million.
yeah. And I think that's a pretty nice summary there. Overall, all positives for the district as well. So I think the future's looking pretty good with where you are from a fund balance standpoint, and you're in line with the expectations on where you should be spending your dollars from a instruction versus support side of things. So a lot of positive takeaways.
And I want to say, kind of follow up for the board and really for everybody in the audience and online. We recognize, and this has been a kind of a long-term plan. We've been setting the stage for this since 2020, since we started the COVID conversation. We know we've been adding to the fund balance. And what you heard tonight from Mr. Strauss is that we're also going to be spending some of that fund balance down. And the board has got a very significant obligation. I know I got a couple new board members in the audience. We've got an obligation to control that spigot, to determine each year how much of that fund balance we're going to spend down. And are we going to have a smooth trajectory, or are we going to have, kind of a cliff? And we've seen both if we look around the state, if it's not managed well. I want to make certain that I give a lot of credit where credit is due. I want to say hats off to Marcus and Matt and his whole team, their team. If you didn't hear the line items that you saw when we were going down through the budget, Marcus is within 1% on every one of those categories. I want you to think about that. He's 99% accurate or better in every line item sitting in your budget. And that right there, that's Matt. And please make sure that you relay that back. And I want to say that part of that, because I know Marcus is working on our amended budget, part of that is the process that this board has adopted, that we amend our budget again in December, and then we amend our budget again in March. And we are constantly looking, and again, for those folks out there, the Facilities and Finance Committee that meets monthly to review our expenses and to make certain that we're on track. These are the safeguards, the rails that really help our district. And I realize all of the things that we do, but we're a somewhere an $80 million organization, and that's what, if we don't take care of that, all of the rest of it's gonna fall by the wayside. So I want to make certain I give credit where credit's due. Again, Marcus, please extend my thank you and
Please
appreciation
stand,
to your,
Marcus.
to your board,
Please stand.
to the rest of your group. Mr. Schaus, did I miss anything there?
No, I
I'll
think-
say that is impressive to be within 99% accuracy. That is with budget amendments and stuff throughout the year. But if you actually look at the initial budget and compare it to where we landed, that's actually probably, I think the revenue side was 7 or 8%, and the expenditure side was even closer. So to start the year with a projection and land pretty close to that by the end of the year is, I think, also really impressive.
And really hats off to the rest of our team, Matt and Jessica and everyone in the business office, just doing this every day.
Yeah, but to your point, I think you're spot on with every point you just made there. We have a cushion, don't want to get complacent with that dollar. I believe for the 24-25 year, we are original budget projected to spend a little bit of that, about $600,000. So we're already seeing a little bit of that shift. And when you look at that federal dollars, it's not one for one on the revenue versus expenditures. We had $11 million on the ESSER side of things. That's not going to be there next year. So getting comfortable with having a $19 million fund balance probably isn't the answer. Moving into the last couple of things that I have, I wanted to mention it just I do think it's an important letter. It's very easy to just gloss over it, but you do have a governance letter. It is a required communication from the auditor to the board or those charged with governance at the completion of the audit. It is a very boring letter. You want it to be a very, very boring letter. When we start getting fireworks or any sort of interesting things in here, it means something probably didn't go right with the audit. So it's a very boring letter, just like you want to see. Talks about some of the estimates that are factored into the financial statements. When you look at the top of page 2, these are the points that I like the most, or I like to highlight the most. You can see that we didn't have any difficulties in performing the audit. And we came here as first-year auditors, finance team, didn't fully know what to expect when you have a new switch in the auditor side of things, but it was a very good group to work with. Our team enjoyed working with them. They made our lives as easy as you can when we're coming in to do an audit. So all of that's very positive information. We had no corrected or uncorrected misstatements. Those would be amounts where we thought a number should be one amount. Maybe management didn't agree with that. We'd have to disclose that information here. Nothing of that happening during the current year. No other disagreements with management. And we did receive a representation letter at the conclusion of our audit, which is basically a long list of we were provided everything that we needed to perform our audit as we need to perform it. So all very, very good things, and overall a boring letter like you would like to see. And before I kind of wrap up, I just want to really thank everybody. Thank the school board. Thank you, Mr. Beal. Thank the finance team. You guys really did a fine job. I like to really tell boards that getting a clean audit, having all of this presentation go kind of the way it doesn't happen in the last month of the year or after year end as they're getting ready for the audit. It happens, as Marcus had said, kind of day in and day out, really doing the right thing, making sure that the financial information is reliable from a board standpoint, and you can make really, really confident decisions at the board because you're getting some of that really good information. So overall, I'm highly appreciative of all the work within the finance team. Very happy to be here presenting to you. And to me, this isn't necessarily the end of any communication. We like to really form partnerships with every single school that we work with. I know Marcus knows, I know their finance team knows. We're an open door. We're not charging for phone calls. When you guys have something that comes up, a question, absolutely feel free. If the board has questions, absolutely feel free to pick up the phone and reach out to us. I can leave business cards as well, but we really fortunate to be working with you and happy to help Jackson Public Schools in any way become the best that it can be. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Hey, next up, a month ago, we adopted our new DEI policy. And in that policy, one of the pieces it talks about is reporting out. And I have an obligation to report out at the end of the year. And what we're doing is we're actually going to try to report out multiple times a year. And that way, the end of the year report is a summary or a bit in whole of all of the pieces that we're doing. So Kelly, I'm going to turn this over to you and Kelly Crum. I want to make sure I give a shout out to Kelly Crum. She is about 4 minutes from completing her admin certification.
It's done.
Michigan School Administrative Certificate. So she is a certified administrator. We are thrilled to have to be able to say that. In addition to her other things, Kelly's taken on a lot of other pieces for us. We think of diversity, equity, inclusion, and you're going to hear a lot about some of the work she's doing. But Kelly is working very hard on our McKinney-Vento, which is our homeless population. She's working on our ESL population, which is a growing group in our community and a need for Jackson Public Schools. And then she is also gearing up to help us with our Title IX work. So there's some pieces coming to her. Kelly is not afraid of any challenge. So the nice piece is as we talk about these things, a lot of what you're going to hear kind of dovetails in with a variety of different areas that Ms. Crum is working on. So Kelly, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Jeff. I'm always excited to be in front of the board. Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Bill, for this space. If you know me, you know my heart. You know my passion for people and for students. So having the opportunity to be here now a year, coming back home to Jackson Public Schools, it's amazing. I can't tell you the times that I'm in the buildings and seeing the great work of our staff. I am so, so proud to be a part of the JPS family and to present you today with just some data about our students and some updates on what I'm doing. So my first slide says, who are our Jackson Public School students? I'm very proud. I'm a graduate of Jackson Public Schools. And as I look at the students and have conversations with them, I want to see them grow, right? Grow and go out and do an amazing thing. So I wanted to give you an overview of a breakdown of our students. So as you look at our elementary enrollment that we have right now, we got 2,112 students. And I want you to note that 81% of those students are free and reduced lunch. They get free and reduced lunch. When we look at our secondary enrollment, there's 2,150 students, and they are 71% of those students get our free and reduced lunch. When we talk about our English language learners, shout out to our instructors, our teachers, our paras, our administrators. We have 163 students. Some of those are bilingual, some of those are multilingual, speaking many languages that come, and we wrap our arms around them to make sure that they are successful. When we look at our IEPs, our special education services, our individualized educational program, we are servicing 583 students that are being serviced. So these are all our people, all our family that make sure that we come to work, show up every day to make sure that our students get the resources and the support that they need. And so you as our Board of Education, our leaders for the district and Superintendent Bill, I want you to be proud of what we have here and in our staff that work hard every day that come in to service our students. I wanted to make sure that you understood the ethnicity of who these students are that I just talked about. So as you can see, our African-American students, what they represent, the number of students and the percentages, there's 1,397 students are African-American. You look at our Alaskan Native American Indian, we have 20 students, our Asian, 79. Our Hispanic Latinos, 385 students, our multiracial, 747. Pacific Islanders 6, and our white students are 1,744 students. That is the makeup of our diversity in Jackson Public Schools. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that. I had a training today, a DEI training that Mr. Patterson and myself did, and those were our new teachers, our new paras, our new TAs. And the one thing that brought them to Jackson Public Schools was the diversity of our students. Some of them didn't have that where they came from. And so as they're navigating the waters and wanting to understand and learn, they're proud of being a part of what we have here in our students. So under the supervision of Superintendent Bill, we have some equity teams in each building. I was so proud of this initiative because as we just have our equity policy that we passed last month, we've been working. The work has already been, it was going on before I actually got here, right? And so as my job is to make sure that all students, when we talk about equity, get what they need academically and socially. So each building has been charged, and they're doing a phenomenal job. They've got an equity goal. And their equity goal was surrounded by either, in 4 categories, they could choose either school climate and culture, student achievement, disciplinary, attendance, or family community engagement. And their goals came out of the thought exchange survey that we did last May, and their eyes and ears of what they see in their buildings. And so as they chose their goal with a variety of the principals and the other staff, we created action steps. Action steps came with responsibilities of who's going to do what, timelines of how we're going to do it, and there are some measurables. And these folks show up once a month with great ideas because they want to champion the work of our students. We know that we're on a journey. We know that we are not perfect, but we want to always do and get better. So this is what's happening in each and every building once a month, how we're supporting our students, our staff, and our family. And as we talk about student voice, which is very important, I've always been a champion as a coach of student voice. In my prior job, I ran a lot of student leadership teams, and I know that students can make change in the buildings, and their voice is essential. They are our stakeholders. They are our future. And so as we talk about encouraging our students, which we do, for them to share ideas, to contribute to what they want to see, Jackson Public Schools, these things are happening. In this picture right here, this is Sharp Park, and you see them talking about on their sign what's fair and what's not fair. So they're having those discussions. There's other pictures, there's Parkside, there's Montessori. They're having robust conversations on what they want to see in their school, in their environment, in their community. This is home to them. This is their second home away from home. And our staff is doing a great job of listening and providing tools to help them with us to resolve maybe some challenges that they see and some things that they want to make happen. In this picture, you got, there is Parkside, there is Dibble, and there is also, I'm trying to see who this is right here. I think that's Sharp Park again. So all of the schools have their student voice groups up and going and providing what they want and what they need for them to thrive, I should say. So I'm excited. I know that was a goal that you all wanted to see as a Board of Education, and it's happening. It is happening. My next slide, I want to give a shout out to our parent liaisons. I think this is a phenomenal asset to what we have. Not all schools have parent liaisons. We have 12. 12 folks working in our buildings to make sure that we can close the gap between families coming into school. We want them to feel this is a place of belonging. Culture is important to our families. Not all of our families have had great experiences with schools, but we open our doors. We want them to come in. And so there are some highlights of some things that are happening. You all have the packet where each school is doing some amazing work, and there's some numbers to support that, getting parent-teacher conferences. I think about Parkside, just in October, they had 450 adults that came in that day to be a part of their children's academic success, to sit down, do a craft with them, and just kind of hang out and see what's happening. So again, I support a place of belonging, which we have here at Jackson Public. Hunt, actually last week, I got an opportunity to be over there, and that was part of their equity team. From that thought exchange survey, they wanted to see more parent engagement. And so they hosted their craft day where they had parents come hang out. I thought they were excited. I was there to greet them, boots on the ground. That's what I do, to make sure that people felt welcome coming into our building. So at Jackson High School, doors always open. We got the extracurricular activities, the sports are going on, and just amazing things when it comes to our parent liaison. So shout out, I think Christy is over there, and she's doing an amazing work. And also, to go on with our parent liaisons, you have a McKinney-Vento brochure in front of you, and Julie Baker's done an amazing job being the district liaison. She passed the baton to me, and I'm trying to keep up. I'm running with that. And so as you think about McKinney-Vento, if you don't know, it's a homeless person, our students, someone who may lack a fixed, regular, adequate nighttime residence. A lot of our students that we have here may not have a permanent residence. They are hopping from place to place. They are staying at motels, friends' house, sleeping in cars. We have 176 students that are McKinney-Vento students, and our parent liaisons do an amazing job to make sure that they have clothes. So we go out and make sure they have clothes. If they're on a sports team, we make sure they have the equipment that they need. If they're in our band, right, they're going to make sure we get their instrument, gas cards to get them to and from school. And so this particular program initiative is about empathy. How do we make sure that our students, when they come to school and may not have their birth certificate or everything they need to enroll, we still enroll them? Because this is where they chose to be, and we're going to make sure that they have everything they need to be successful. So as we are diving into all of the things that I am doing and being a part of, it's not just me. I cannot take credit. This is a team effort in what we do here. And as I continue to get this PowerPoint to, oh no, let me go back one. Okay, here we go. I got it. Thank you. As we go to advancing equity work, just to kind of give some highlights of the continued work that I'm doing, continue to provide professional development. I told you I did that today, and continuing with that. Supporting our administrators. I love to do that when they call. I definitely come running classroom conversations with students. At Parkside today, I had a teacher come in and say, hey, Kelly, I need you to come in. There's some things happening in the classroom. Jeremy's my witness. I need you to come, right? I need some help. I'm here to help you. We're doing instructional rounding. We did that at Parkside. We're going to do that again here at Jackson High School. Actually, we did it last week with the English department, and it's them observing each other in classrooms, seeing what is happening, getting best practices, affirming students, looking at their classrooms. Does it represent the students that they serve? And a lot of learning is happening. And then again, lastly, supporting our teachers. So as I continue to advance this equity work, I'm excited about the journey, the continued journey that Jackson Public School is on, and just glad to be a part of what is happening here. So just wanted to give you a brief overview of what I am doing and will continue to do as long as I'm here. So at this time, if I can get this to do right, and it did, I would love to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you, Kelly. That was great. I was just curious, McKinney-Vento, is that a federal, something federal?
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Okay,
is.
and it's been around for a while?
It has been. And so,
Okay.
yes. And so I want to make sure that you guys, definitely were aware of that. There are McKinney-Vento liaisons in all the school districts, and we meet quarterly to kind of exchange kind of information of what's happening. They've been working very closely with Julie, and of course she can speak more to that because she's been doing this a lot longer than I have. I wasn't very familiar with McKinney-Vento until I came to K through 12, but it is a need.
Yeah.
And I can just also speak to Marilyn that on yesterday, I met with the ISD, partnered with the ISD, and our chief equity officer, our city manager, and our mayor. And I was sharing with them the concern of what is happening with our students that are home. These are families. When people think of homelessness, they think of someone walking down the street pushing a cart. No, these are our babies that are here at our school, and how can we support Jackson County? So we talked about getting a work group together to get information out and how we can solve the homelessness problems, right, in our community. So yes, I'm glad that you were able to be aware of this.
And also, are those equity goals posted anywhere for us to look at?
They are not posted, but I can make sure that you get a copy of what it is and who's doing what in what building. Absolutely.
I would like that. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Thank you for the report. Excited that this board move forward with the equity policy and looking forward to future reports and a final kind of cumulative end of the year report. And I appreciate you raising and highlighting the ways that we go about doing student involvement and putting some emphasis on parent involvement and some of the highlights just from what it looks like October and November. And I know that a lot of the schools are doing that all the time. So thank you for highlighting that because we have had folks that have come here to either speak here or some of the members of the board that have raised that as a point of concern or interest, and it's great to reinforce that that work is happening in our in our schools and across the district. As for McKinney-Vento students, it says 176 here. I'm guessing that I'm sure that that's a not a static number, and that changes throughout the school year. Is there like a estimate of how many students across the district that those resources touch for the school?
Julie, you want to speak more to that because you know a little bit more?
This is one of the higher identification years that we've had in a while. And once a student is identified for McKinney-Vento services, they qualify for the rest of the year.
Okay.
So that we'll just be adding to that number. There's two pots of money that we use. One of them is a county grant from that's the McKinney-Vento grant, and we get an allocation from the ISD. And then if we need to do something beyond that, if we spend all of that, then we have some set aside money in one of our title funds that we use for that. But it includes transportation, clothing. We can also do tutoring. There's just a ton of ways that we can help. It's really meant to make sure that all students, whether they are inadequately housed or experiencing homelessness, that they have an opportunity to have the same school experience as their peers. So,
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, Kelly. This was an awesome presentation. Lots of good information. And I was thinking just like Marilyn, like where are these goals at? I want to see what the students are coming up with. And then you added the other piece, not just focusing on our students, but also supporting our teachers. And our teachers, it sounds like they feel comfortable coming to you saying that we need help. And so we want that open door policy, if you will, where you're approachable and you're willing to come in and address whatever issues that they may be having. And then as far as the McKinney-Vento, I don't know, I was kind of shocked by the number. I was kind of shocked.
Yeah.
That's a large
Yes.
number. And I
Yes.
guess my question is, they said, you said they qualify for each year, for that whole
For a
year,
whole
right?
year,
Do
they'll
we
stay,
follow
they'll stay
them?
with us. And you got to think about this, right? This could be a family, a mom or a dad, right, that has 3 or 4 kids,
Okay,
right? Those numbers,
okay.
right? So yes, I was as well. But this is our reality. This is our reality. And so as we look at, equity, as we look at helping our students, we want to make sure that we provide them with all of the resources. And so we partner with other agencies, right? Interfaith Shelter, Community Action Agency. And I was thinking about Derek's question, and Julie talked about it. Like, we only get $6,000 for this. That's it. And so we have to use other monies, pots of monies, right, to help us help our students. And the number may go up. I wanted you to make sure that you knew this is what we have right now.
Mhm.
But cost of living is going up, right? Rent is going up. So our numbers may go up as well. And so that's where I'm partnering with our city officials
Mhm.
to talk about what ways that we can do to help our students here at Jackson Public Schools.
And real quick, kind of just a point, because Ms. Hunt, I heard you kind of at the end, do we follow them? It's
Right.
not that a student can't be homeless for more than a year or qualify for more than a year, but that once they qualify, if they qualify at any point in a school year, they automatically qualify for services the entire school year. That's the way the law is written. So you could potentially have a student who qualifies in May and that school year might end, and they might still be in that situation or a different situation come August, and they would qualify or re-qualify again. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. And I'm thinking someone qualifies 9th grade. Are we going to see them again in 10th grade
Unless,
and
yeah.
in 11th grade? You see what I'm saying? Are
You
we pairing-
could.
like, are we
Mhm.
seeing those numbers reduce where we kind of close that gap during that year that they were eligible? And then we may see some different students, or is it a continuation or some of these students carrying over into other school years?
And we really are just to support, but the support has grown. There's a few things that have happened recently in our district. One of them is the hiring of all of these parent liaisons. About 30% of their time is they've gone through the training for McKinney-Vento, and they are also McKinney-Vento liaisons. So we have people, boots on the ground in each of our schools. They also work in those community pantries that we have in each of the schools, community closets, sorry. So they benefit from the clothing that's there and some of the other resources. They are sometimes the students that are taking home the food bags that we get from churches. So, and this is really a range. So it's students that are staying at the shelter. It's also families that are doubling up. Like they get evicted and they wind up having to move into a home that is not meant for, an additional 5 people. So there's a range there. But there's a lot of supports that are built in, and I think that we just keep adding to those. I'm really proud of our district for that.
One last question. Are we seeing any correlation of our McKinney-Vento students that make up the IEP population?
There's definitely overlap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's definitely overlap, but I wouldn't say that it's disproportionately so. I would say that there definitely some of our McKinney-Vento students are students that they may wind up falling behind academically, but they may not necessarily be identified for an IEP. They may not have an actual, learning disability. I think that we do see some students that qualify for an IEP, but a lot of students that are experiencing that kind of chaos and upheaval in their homes, they're at the very least they struggle academically to keep up.
District-wide, we're about 11-12% special education, receive special education supports in some measure or another. So I haven't pulled the recent on the McKinney-Vento on that particular population, and that population changes. It's very fluid, but my guess is it's probably gonna be right in that same 11 to 12% number. And that's pretty consistent year over year. It doesn't that number hasn't changed drastically, although we got a bumper crop of kindergartners, so it's entertaining right now.
Kelly, known you since you were a little girl, and I just want you to know how proud I am of how you've taken this very difficult topic, totally varied topic, and put it together so people can understand this is the problem, these are the options, this is the solution, this is what we're doing. I think of all the presentations I've listened to on DEI, and there have been many, I have never come away feeling so understanding of what it actually is and its purpose. And they say people don't know what the left hand is, the right hand is doing. And I feel like you just connected all those dots and all those people and clasped those hands. And I'm so proud of what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
I just want to close with this. Kelly, again, congratulations on your certificate and really great work in not just grabbing hold of a piece of what we're doing, but really trying to grab hold of as much as we can and what we're doing and grow what we're doing. We hear a lot about student voice, a lot about parent voice, a lot about teacher voice. We do a lot of surveys. I give Chris Gianetti and her department a lot of credit for this because we take that surveys and now I love the AI tools in the world. They help us get down to the core of what those surveys are getting. It really allows us to get good meat out of those surveys. And what you see are direct responses. You know, our parent liaison group being able to help the parents with what they're looking for and what they need. Our teachers, when they're reaching out saying, hey, I need help in my classroom or I need something in my classroom. You know, that's our ability to immediately react and go in and to be able to help out and to be able to address the student issues and the concerns that they share. So I want to just hats off to the crew that continues to do great work. And that actually concludes the superintendent's report for the month of November.
Excellent. Thank you. We're now on to the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Okay, second.
Support.
Any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Thank you. Now we're going to citizens requesting to speak to the board. And we have two. We have Avion and then John. Okay, Avion? Thank you.
And Avion, if you hit the little guy with the microphone that's on the right-hand side, the button with the three, yeah, there you go. Perfect.
And I'm in a meeting, so that's why I have a AirPod in, so I'm gonna talk while I'm listening. So when I think about power of youth leadership, I'm reminded of Ruby Bridges. In 1960, at just 6 years old, she walked into history books, integrating an all-white school in New Orleans. So let me remind you something. Ruby, she didn't have a choice. She didn't have a seat at the table or voices in decisions being made about her life. What she had was what many of us wish we have, is courage. But courage alone isn't enough. Change isn't something we can place solely on the shoulders of the young. No, change demands action from every one of us. So I ask you, when I walk into this room, I see the board, I see administrators, but why on the left can't there be a student of Jackson Public Schools, a seat where their voices could echo this room, where they can serve here? So I always give you facts. So I'm gonna give you some facts. Schools with active student advisory boards report results. So a 2021 study found that schools with student representation saw a 15% increase in engagement, better attendance rates, and even higher academic achievement. And I want to be very clear. These aren't just numbers. This is about creating a culture where students feel valued, respected, and heard. So in a notion, I quote a historian. Her name is Anna Cooper. She said, the cause of freedom is not just the cause of race or a sect, a party, or a class. It is the cause of humankind, the very birthright of humanity. So let me tell you what matters. So freedom isn't just about laws or rights written on a page. It's about the power to stand and speak, to lead. And when we talk about the students of Jackson Public Schools, we're talking about the future. They are the future legislators, mechanics, doctors, but most importantly, change makers. So again, let me be very clear. They can't lead tomorrow if we silence them today. That's why I'm going back. If we have administrators on the right, school board here, why can't a youth board stand here and sit here, seven of them, each embodying a role that you guys all embody as well. And we sit 8 hours a day in a classroom. Sadly, you don't. So you don't know the core concerns that are happening in the classroom. That's why we need a board to inform, or a board of youth to inform you the issues. And so someone I look up to, she once said, only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. Well, it's been dark for too long. There's a few stars here, like the Youth Council of the City of Jackson is now allowing middle schoolers to join. It was only high schoolers. After I've had that changed, and it should be added in about 30 days. Things like the student voice of Parkside, that's amazing. The NJHS, we're working on student government, which should be announced at the end of December. So it's not just student council where they plan events, but it's also a place where they can come together and learn civics. So it is the time for our students to shine. So I ask again, why not make a space for them? And why not give them the tools to learn governance, to challenge us, to hold us accountable? So I promise you this. Creating a student board isn't just an investment in the future, it's an investment in ours. So again, let's make history and remember this moment, not as one where we ask why, but as one where we ask why not. I'm very clear. I come up here a lot. I come to a lot of places and speak, but I don't get a lot of responses. Recently, I went to the City of Jackson Council meeting, and I got a response from the mayor very, very quickly. He sent me his text message, and now we're getting the ball rolling with the DEI office, City of Jackson. I came here last board meeting, I think, and I went up to this table and I asked, can we have a meeting about the youth council? But I just haven't got any information. So I'm not coming up here to tell you this and this, for you just to write it down or keep it in your brain, but to come up to me after this board meeting and talk to me about what we can do to have a board of youth sit here. And I yield my time. I'm finished here, so thank you. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the thought that goes into your comments.
Hello, I'm John King. I live at 203 3rd Street here in the city, not too far from here. For the equity reports, hopefully the information can be put online for everyone to access. There's maybe important information, but for the most part, hopefully we can, rather than there being African-American students, white students, and what have you, hopefully we can, for the most part, look at them as JPS students. I wasn't necessarily going to come here, but I have to kind of correct the record where at the end of his comment at the last meeting, Derek Dobie seemed to insinuate that I suggested the First Amendment included, maybe threatening you to, you better do this or I'm going to hurt you. So I wanted to correct that. Maisha Jones, that's the example. But, I did not say the First Amendment included threats of bodily harm.
John, you never hurt me.
Okay, good. There's been wins and losses, I think, for everyone with the election. And I think one win, maybe Derek and I couldn't agree, maybe others, that maybe we could be looking to less money being burnt up in bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., and maybe some more money could flow to JPS students and other schools. So, that's a hope. One loss to me, and I think it's unfortunate, Elena Sharp was elected. She's part of Team Keisha, Fire Jeff Beal. sh- she won't send her kids to JPS. On her campaign page, someone asked her about that, and she had an answer. So I respectfully, sort of mentioned partly that, but more that because of her position as the teacher on an adjoining or almost overlapping school district, and I believe I heard that she also negotiates for the union, there's a conflict of interest there. So when she's going to negotiate, if that comes to pass, there's issue that it actually will affect her salary over at Western. So I don't think she should be allowed to even go into the room to negotiate or even talk with people. There's a conflict of interest. So when I mention it to her, rather than giving a respectful answer back or anything like that, a thoughtful answer, she just deleted it and then blocked me. So, that's unfortunate on her part. I wanted to mention, like with Jeff Beal, not only that there's less trash, but since he's come in the last 10 years, before that, in the middle of last century, I know there were a lot of fights on my block. Students would go down the center of the street by the dozens. And so that's one thing I noticed. I've seen Jeff Beal on JTV and everything like that. Then, I mentioned, there's the superintendent in Ann Arbor where they had $25 million. She went by doctor and, she was eventually fired. There was some bus incident and they eventually got rid of her because of that. But, so just the report earlier, from all these things, I know Jeff Beal's doing a good job. I don't, these, former employees that complain, maybe no one's perfect, but I don't believe them. And so I wanted to say, I met before 6-7 years at the MLK Center. I just briefly talked with Jeff Beal about the millage before that got passed. And so otherwise, I've seen him here. So I'm not like a good friend. I'm not, I think that happens a lot. People come here and talk great about their friends, but I'm just doing it from my observations. I'm not really biased in this. So, and for those that are going to be leaving, I'm not sure I'll be at the next meeting unless I have to correct the record again. But, thanks to, all the board members, 6 years, maybe even if it's 20, 30 hours a week and everything. So thank you to all of them. So have a good evening.
Comments? Okay, that's it for our citizens requesting to address the board. We have a discussion item, 24, 25, 22, Neola updates. Jeff?
So I'm going to give kind of a general, because this is first reading, and our policy committee met, and we were able to actually sit down with the vice president from Neola this time. So it was nice to have, she happened to be in the area. She happened to be in the area, and so we had an opportunity to visit with her. The policies for our first reading are going to be the updated Title IX policy, and we're going to try to get that to you last month, and there was a conversation about guidance on how to conduct an investigation based on when a Title IX infraction occurred. And that's because we saw a change in the Title IX law at the national level. So if an infraction happened pre-August 1, we followed a certain policy. And we have a new policy, which you got in front of you, and if an infraction happened after August 1, we had a different policy, and then the conversation was, well, what happened if it crossed over? And we sat down and really kind of hammered away on that one, and really we had the right answer the first time. Kind of we take the advice of the attorneys involved in that position, because each attorney is going to kind of weigh where the infraction or the significance of the infraction, how that plays out. So that's in front of you. And there's some choices that we made throughout that policy as the policy committee. And I kind of just draw your attention as you're going through it. You'll see most of it lies in the exact same line as what we've already been doing. So we didn't change drastically from what we have been doing. What we're simply doing is adopting the new policy and pushing or rolling our practices forward with that policy change. And for everybody out there in the world who says, oh my gosh, Jeff, what's Title IX and what does this mean? It really centers around discrimination based on sex and is the conversation this time around. But I will tell you, I feel and I've done this a number of times, Title IX changes about every 90 or 120 days. So I promise you, we will be right back doing another Title IX, which is why when I talked to Kelly about taking on some of this, it's because it is such a big job, and you really can't. You have to have somebody who can keep up with the constant change that we see. So just something there. You do see some Edgar updates, and everybody's going to go, well, Jeff, what on earth is Edgar? Edgar is the mandatory obligations, the reporting that we have when we spend federal dollars. So we receive federal dollars somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million plus or minus every year, not counting the COVID money that we were receiving. And there's requirements for reporting and how we keep track of the booking for those dollars. And again, I give a hats off to Marcus. So most of these policies are really going to be how Marcus and his team are going to have to do their job. And we have to adopt the policies to be in line with the requirements to receive the money. So that's the Edgar changes in front of you. Take a peek at those. This is first reading. If you have questions on any of the policies in front of you, most of it is pretty straight language changes. There's not a lot in here that we get to choose. Lots of times people think we've got all kinds of choices in our policies, but these are largely driven by changes in law or court cases. So take a peek at them. They'll be back before you in December for approval. And I would give a shout out to Keisha and Marilyn and Shalonda for their participation in our policy committee this year. It's hours of this. And again, I always say this, if you really are struggling to fall asleep, grab this policy and start reading Edgar rules and you'll be out cold in no time. But thank you very much for all of your work. It'll be my recommendation next month that we adopt them, but they're up for discussion. I don't know if anybody's got anything else to contribute to that.
I think that we wanted to clarify that the Title IX, the new rules, weren't anything about athletics. That's what she said. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody.
100% accurate. It really had nothing to do with that. I know it's a big topic out in the world. And we're just dealing with the law in front of us today. So.
Okay. Number 9, action items. We have 3, and the first one is 24, 25, 23, audit record. Marcus.
Madam Chair, move to accept the audit report as presented.
Second. Discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Great job, Marcus.
Nice job.
Okay. Now we're going on to 24, 25, 24. It's the summer property tax levy resolution.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the resolution as presented.
Second.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 24, 25, 25. 31 AA door hardware purchase.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve, move approval of the quote in the amount of $147,340 as presented in the purchase.
Second. Libby? Discussion.
I just want to thank Marcus on this one. Yeah, and Todd. Sorry, I want to thank Todd, Marcus. I don't know what we're talking about here, but when I got here, there's all kinds of conversations, and Libby, you've been around a long time, seen this stuff. How many different keys do we have, and how many different cores? And as we've worked on what the safety security might look like, I think we're going to finally get to the common key core here. Marcus was able to finagle a deal where we buy 3, get the 4th one free. Is about how I understand it. We're going to save about $30,000 by acting tonight, and so it's a good deal. We have to get them ordered, and by the end of the year, so that's why it ends up on the budget on the agenda today. But just again, a huge shout out to those folks for their work. Now that put them all in, but.
I'm thrilled about that. That was very difficult having 25 keys for a building. You have to have a separate purse to carry them. Okay. Any discussion on this? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Board comments. Recognize anyone who has a board comment. Marilyn.
So I just wanted to congratulate Elena Sharp, Suba Reddy, and Cheryl
our
Simonetti,
Cheryl.
my goodness.
Our Cheryl.
I just look forward to collaborating with all of you. Thanks.
Welcome. We're excited. Elena, congratulations. Cheryl, congratulations. And Suba, congratulations. And yeah, we're looking forward to a new year and new ideas, new perspectives, and working together for our district, for our students, for our teachers, and collaboratively as a board and administrators.
Derek, anything?
Congrats to Cheryl, Suba, and Elena. Look forward to working with you guys.
Liv? I almost hate to say the congratulations thing again, so I just really am not going to say the congratulations thing. I am just thrilled. We're getting some new people on here who seem to have some ideas and some excitement for the position. Tonight has been one of the most positive board meetings we've had in a long time, and I'm certainly hoping that continues with our new additions. So congratulations, and thank you for taking this job on. Okay, calendar. December 2nd is a board work session for the superintendent evaluation. It's at the ISD. It's a closed session, isn't it? It's a closed session. Okay. The 17th is our regular meeting, my very last meeting in my 12 years on the board, at the Media Center, like always, here. January 21st is the organizational regular meeting, and that's the meeting that our new officers will begin to guide the board down the right track. Okay. Second.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Motion carries. Thank you. You said what?